ladies and gentlemen, somebody who's out there making huge sacrifices for the sake of bringing the truth to us, and I'm not overblowing this, Patrick Henningsen is working day and night to do the best he can to do great articles. He was just at a recent conference. We missed him for a few days there, but he was doing great work and putting it all on the record, and a great conference at AV5. Thank you very much for joining us for that update, Patrick. But Patrick Henningsen joins us. 21stCenturyWire.com is going to be very instrumental in bringing us the truth in regards to the Bundy Ranch thing. You'll be hearing about that in the coming weeks. But Patrick, welcome back.
Hey, Pete, great to be back. Sorry I missed you on Sunday. We had a little communications, wires crossed. But
that's okay.
Yeah, it was a absolutely superb event, the best one I've ever been to of that type. And, just all the way around, great speakers, great attendees, very active people, everyone doing something in their own community, in their own way. No central leadership, which I loved. It's just really like you say, like-minded individuals coming together, and, supporting each other morally, in some cases, with knowledge and, participation, advice. And it's working. There's 187 anti-fracking groups in Britain right now. This took place in the space of 1 year, and they have no leader, no central pyramid structure. They're all self-organizing. And they're all working in their local communities, okay? And they're not marching on the government in Westminster. They've given up on that, and they're just bringing it back to their local communities, and it's working. So there's something big going on. It's not just in Britain. It's happening in America, and you're a part of that as well, Pete. It's people beginning to notice what's going on in their own backyard and supporting their neighbor.
This is how we're going to take our system back. We have to do it neighborhood by neighborhood, community by community, county by county, state by state. We will render Washington D.C. useless when we tell them we don't need you at all, right?
Yep. I got absolutely slated by a couple of people in the comment section on my website. Said, "How come you didn't report on Operation American Spring? You're not almost like they're saying we're covering it up." And I was like, my attitude is, nothing really happened. I'll report on it, but there's so many other things to report on. But personally, I'm really more focused on what's going on in Utah, in Texas, in Arizona, in Nevada, California. That's to me more important right now, and I support the efforts of those who made their way out to Washington D.C., but it's not newsworthy, and I don't want to report that it's a flop. I just let it go.
No, it's not a flop. As a matter of fact, it's going to be an ongoing thing. If you don't mind, please allow me to do this. I just dropped the bomb in your Skype here. Okay.
Okay.
I want you to look at this link right here, because I believe this is probably one of the most important news stories going on in this regard. All right.
Okay.
I'm going to read this here. Obama is going to declare 500,000 acres as the Oregon Mountains Desert Peaks National Monument. About half of that land is expected to be set aside as wilderness, meaning it will be closed to vehicles and construction. Okay? They're again seizing land, and they're doing it through legislation. He's about to sign legislation, and I need to go even further to tell you how impactful this is going to be. All right, this is we have a major breach even going on on the border itself. President Obama is poised to sign this SB 1805 next week, contrary to major media reports. All right, contrary to major media reports, this legislation is not supported by any of the local people. We must stand and fight and resist this thing. We have the sheriffs that oppose it. We have the residents who oppose it. We even have politicians who oppose it. And Obama is about to sign SB 1805. So let's talk about that when we come back. This is what we need to be covering here. And how we attack this thing is at the county level, at the state level. Operation American Spring is going to become much bigger than Washington, D.C. Operation American Spring, we're not going to put pause on it, okay? It's going to flourish in the following way. We don't sit here on Twitter and YouTube and say, oh, how many people showed up, and then determine whether or not we're going to save our country. That's not how it's going to happen. We're going to communicate issues like the Bundy Ranch and what's going on in Utah and what's going on in Nevada. We're going to county by county exercise our constitutional rights. This SB, Senate Bill 1805, is the largest intentional breach of American border security ever seen in over 38 years by this Zach Taylor, chairman of border. He's a border security expert with the National Association of Former Border Patrol Officers. It's an open invitation for foreign drug cartels and transnational criminals to bring their illegal drugs and aliens into the United States in one of the largest land grabs, 500,000 acres. It's of the magnitude of a Bundy Ranch type scenario. Now, this New Mexico Sheriff, Todd Garrison, let me give you his telephone number. You call him and tell him that you support him. Here's his number, 575-525-8835. Okay? It's Anna County, New Mexico Sheriff, Todd Garrison. You let him know that we will support his efforts to stop this SB 1805 and to reclaim that land for the American people and for the people in the counties that own this freaking land, dude. Who is the federal government to seize it, Patrick?
Well, I guess looks like the Fast and Furious crew want a beachhead. They want to give a beachhead in New Mexico for the drug cartels because the Arizona is getting sick of it, and they're might shut down that, which is the biggest corridor of drugs entering the United States right now is the Arizona border. And if the federal government says that they're just going to do such a good job patrolling the border, just look at how bad their record is, how truly bad it is. You can walk drugs over the border in groups of 6 and 8 with backpacks, giant backpacks, into the United States.
Yep.
So, there's also you need to look at the geological surveys of that land to see how much shale gas has been found there and other rare earth minerals to know that today, under Obama, it's a national monument. But in 10 years' time, in 20 years' time, it's going to get harvested. Okay? So that's something the residents should look into. Find out the geological data, see if there's any surveys that have been done by any of the major energy companies or any of these sort of outfits. So it doesn't make any sense that they would go against the local population. If they are, that means that they're covering something up and there's another agenda.
Yeah. Now, we know how the federal government acts towards partitioning off lands and treating human beings. All we need to do is to take a look at the history of the American Indian. And I've been studying a lot about the American Indian's plight. And I'll tell you, if you want to see how the citizens of the United States of America, we're basically on one big, huge Indian reservation that's being parceled up, and we're being pushed into corners, and we're being basically socialized in the same fashion that these Indians have done. Suzanne, I know you're proud of me for saying this, by the way. I'm just coming into this learning about what has happened to the American Indian, and I've been studying Russell Means' historical perspective as well. Notice how in this article that the BLM has now been designated as, under the Department of the Interior to administer this national monument. Here we have, isn't it funny? Dude, this is textbook Bundy Ranch.
Yes, the same sort of thing. So they've come in. They've got the left-wing environmentalists behind them who think they're going to save some rare salamander that lives over in the corner of this plot of land, and maybe a few insects that they say are endangered species. But we already know how the environmental crowbar works because we learned that with Bundy Ranch and with some of the other cases in California. So, you hit the nail on the head, Pete, that, Washington's been screwing the Indians for, a couple hundred years, and now they're done screwing them pretty much all they can, and now they've gone to screw everyone else. So actually, for the first time in the history of the United States of America, the U.S. non-Indian citizens now have a common cause with the Native Americans. First time in history. And I think this is important to note right now, and to people to start learning more, like you have, Pete, about how the Indians have been screwed and are being screwed currently all around the country, in every single state in America practically, and learn something from them, because they have all the knowledge, as well as the ranchers that we've met and spoke to. But the Indians also have a lot of knowledge of the tactics of the federal government, how they divide the Indian community, and they pay people off. You know, there's those who accept the handouts or the gifts from the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and there's those Indians who don't want it. There's those who accept the casino buy-offs and the casino carrot, and there's those Indians who don't want it. And they've used those issues to divide the Indian communities on various reservations and within tribes. And it's created political division. It's created people pointing fingers at each other, saying, oh, he's pocketing the money, he's not. So again, same concept. Federal money coming in to corrupt a community and to get people to start pointing fingers at each other, then drawing lines, and next thing you know, they're divided, and you can divide them and rule them when they're divided a lot easier when they're united.
Well, you want to know what the please, I don't want to use this term to divide us, and I mean this sincerely. I'm going to say what the libtards did. Essentially, the tools of the system that is grabbing this land. Okay, and right now we have to call them the left-wingers that are used as tools. They do these sue and settle type arrangements to get the environmentalists to set up these lawsuits so that they can put together an extrajudicial settlement that a judge rubber stamps, and then they therefore say we have a court order. They're using the environmentalists and the left wing, you know, the people that are very impassioned about it. They actually had to ship in, they had to bus in protesters from outside of the area because the local people were so against this bill. The local people were against it. They had to bus in environmentalists and protesters because the people were against it. This is what we need to be pushing back on, that the people that own these counties, own these lands, own these states, and it's not the federal government that can just come in and steamroll us and take our lands back, especially if it's detrimental with regards to drug trafficking and things like that on the Mexican border. No doubt about it. So Patrick, thank you for letting me, launch your segment with that particular topic. But that is the best answer to the question, what are you doing about Operation American Spring? It's much bigger than going to Washington, D.C. screaming at white buildings, isn't it?
Absolutely. The U.S. is a big country, and there's a lot of problems in that country. And there's no shortage of issues in your local community to take up and really get on the ball with.
Russell Means said it. We all now live on the world's largest Indian reservation. We'll be right back right after this. Okay, so national monuments and land grabs and all that stuff, we need to make that come to a screeching halt. And Russell Means, may he rest in peace, of course, spoke very eloquently to the ludicrousness of the American people sitting there and letting our federal government do to us to make us almost like a Native American on the world's largest Indian reservation. All of America is becoming that way. And we're going to provide links in today's episode so that you can also, if you haven't already, you probably already have. I'm probably late to the game to learn more about the plight of the American Indian and how the federal government has treated them and how they've set up socialism, and it's failed on Indian reservations. The socialism they're trying to bring to the greater Indian reservation called the United States of America has already failed at a micro level on Indian reservations. Patrick, hasn't it?
Well, it has failed there. It's failed on a macro level in the United States of America. Look at one of the first things they did with Indian tribes is on the reservations they tried to bring in federal money to kind of standardize their school system. The government in Washington was obsessed with controlling the next generation of Indians through the educational system, so they put in their own kind of Common Core. And what they did was they tried to first eliminate the culture, which is the language, whatever their native tribe language was. to get rid of that, so that the next generation couldn't even speak it. Okay,
right.
And with that, they've more or less destroyed their culture. They've gamed the whole economic system in and around Indian reservations, so that, for instance, in a large reservation, if you get a government check, Pete, from the Bureau of Indian Affairs, you couldn't actually cash it on the reservation. So because the banks wouldn't come in, I don't know if this was planned or what, but the bank said they couldn't even have a check cashing facility on the res because there's not a lender base there. So, it's not worth their while. So hence you have no industrial kind of parks where people can start workshops in their own business and, soup trading sort of facilities. They don't have those. And no real stores, no place to spend your money. So where do you spend it? You spend it right outside the Indian reservation. You'll see big shops, malls, general stores, and so forth. So no money circulating on the reservation. All they've got is fast food, unhealthy fast food joints. They've got liquor stores just over the border, like 10 feet across the border of the res will be a liquor store selling booze at a hugely reduced rate as what it's sold in a normal American town. So they got them drunk. They've got them fattened up. They've got no economic activity whatsoever on the reservation. Total poverty. It's exactly the same, Pete, as Palestine. You look at Palestine, it's not a lot different than Indian reservations. So, in how it's set up. And so it's no surprise that, apartheid South Africa studied the reservation system very closely. Those governments, and I'm sure Israel learned a thing or two from how Americans dealt with their native population. But that's history, and we can study it and commentate on it. But let's talk about today. Today, you're absolutely correct. It is becoming one giant centrally managed reservation in the United States, and they're wanting to keep their jurisdiction as much as possible in the states to override any local decision making and any local interests. So it is happening, and busing in supporters in the case that you're talking about. There's basically socialist scabs they're putting on buses. It's the Al Sharptonization of activism there. It's absolutely appalling, in my opinion.
As I've been studying this in the past couple of days, because I was for the past month, ever since Bundy Ranch, because I believe that the Indian reservations and the Indians have just as much of a fight in this thing in Nevada as the ranchers do. But as I've studied what we've done to the American Indian, I'm literally looking at what they did to the Native Americans and see them using that model on a grander scale with the United States of America. They're making the same exact massive moves and land grabs for the purposes of, economic preservation, environmental preservation, and they're carving us up and they're setting us into the same type of social infrastructure that they did on these Indian reservations. They're just doing it on a much grander scale. I think so. Is that a pretty safe assumption that that's what we're becoming? They practiced it with the Native Americans. Now they're going to implement it on a just like when we say that we're now all slaves. We're now under a much bigger method of enslavement than even the slaves themselves were back during the Civil Rights Movement.
Well, it's better funded, and it's coming from Washington. And it's coming from corporations, and it's very complex, very sophisticated technocracy, corporatist technocracy, which has been constructed in Washington, D.C. And then the next phase, Pete, is when local communities and when states decide enough is enough and they push back. Let's say, this happens en masse in a couple of states. What they'll do then is they'll basically the technology which they developed in places like the Ukraine, in Kiev, and Georgia, and the Arab Spring, which are the color revolutions. They'll start organizing color revolutions inside the United States, whereby they'll bring in these, an Occupy type color revolution to inject it into be the Federalists. So in order to fight the statists, the local state interests. So it's to battle state sovereignty. That might be one of the next trends. If states begin to really exert their state rights, the federal government will then deploy a George Soros style color revolution in that state to divide that state and to overthrow the state government who wants to have its original sovereignty enshrined in the 10th Amendment. They'll try to fight that with a color revolution. They'll call the states separatists. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's something in the future that I believe would be a next move by Washington. If you think about it, that's how a foreign government would deploy a color revolution in another country. And if you think of Washington as increasingly becoming foreign,
they are
to the average American person, then you can expect the sort of behavior Washington launches and exerts around the world to be now deploying that on its own people. Okay. So that's something that people need to keep in mind, and you'll see this on a small scale being test ballooned, but it could become a mass movement, and they will be absolutely controlled and steered by the forces of the federal government.
And we need to preempt that. I believe that our writings, our communication needs to be to circumvent the inevitable. That this is what they will do. This is what we need to watch out for, but keep our core principles intact. That if we revert back to the U.S. Constitution and the original land rights of the Native Americans that were stolen from them, if we can learn by that experience and we can head off what we know will be coming, a foreign entity trying to circumvent and destroy and sabotage. Okay, so Patrick, let's get back to our discussion, and of course, we need to cover important news. I'm sorry, this is an important discussion, though. This is the answer to anybody that wants to say, "How come you're not covering Operation American Spring?" And people going there having silent protests, not even screaming at white buildings. They did a silent protest. Why would you want to go to Washington D.C. and remain silent? I don't know. But you know what? We can be critical of it just as long as we're trying to advance this movement towards sovereignty, state sovereignty. Sovereignty is not a bad word, folks. Go look it up. It's a beautiful, beautiful word. But Patrick, this is, I believe, the answer to those questions. Why are you not covering 300 or 400 people silently standing in front of white buildings? Because we're going to work towards a much more effective method of ensuring our state's rights and our sovereignty, I believe, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm so fired up after being at the conference on the weekend and spending time with Thomas Sheridan, and some of these Ian Crane and some of these great researchers and writers, and it's really focused, provide a really sharp focus. And so, I'm looking at this issue here, Pete, and, the problem with corporate fascism, which is really what you're looking at in Washington, D.C., and I challenge anybody to challenge, anybody to debunk what I'm about to say. Hold on for a second. Incoming ordinance.
That was beautiful.
we have a corporate fascist system. And if you don't believe me, why are there more lobbyists in Washington, D.C. than there are politicians and all their staffers combined?
Okay.
If we don't have corporate fascism, why do they outnumber elected representatives? Okay. And the problem is it's not efficient, and everything is profit motivated for those particular companies that can afford to lobby in Washington, who happen to be the biggest companies. And they talk about energy scarcity. We need to frack because we need natural gas, because this and that. Meanwhile, every single one of those big energy companies are suppressing technology for 100 years now that could make what we call energy right now a lot more efficient and cheaper. And they've spent all of their time and effort to suppress, to harass anybody who's got anything that's effective, that's going to cut into their system.
Can I ask you a question? Okay, I think I've figured something out here. I've always told you I'm dumb as a box of freaking paper clips, but when the light comes on, there's loud noises that happen in my head. Okay? So I figured out the left-right paradigm thing. All right? You got the Democrats, right, or the liberals that believe that the central business is the government that should control everything with all of its agencies and, all of its federal entities that will control everything. And then you have the Republicans who want to, quote unquote, privatize and pretend there's a free market privatization going on, but they're both pushing towards the same controls, whether it be from the private sector with the same fascist relationship and partnership between business, big business, and government, right? Or the liberals who just say, no, we don't even need the businesses. Let's cut them out of the loop. We'll just have it go directly to the government. But they're all accomplishing the same exact thing, aren't they?
They are. And they're both basically pushing for the total authority and total eminence of the central state, the central government. And that's what Occupy was. Occupy was a federal, supreme central government movement. Okay, because if any of these intelligent academics or so-called intelligent lefties had a half of a brain, they would be able to see that the problem in the United States is corporate fascism, which is fused at a central government level. It's not the 1% or whatever you want to call it. So they use them to argue about distribution of wealth, redistribution of wealth. We need to take from the rich, give to the poor, the whole Robin Hood narrative. Right. But what they're really doing there is empowering the state, and we know that the state, even in Bolshevik Russia, the state basically was getting its money and having its top layer totally preserved, and they needed an authoritarian socialist state in order to preserve that special top layer of the elite. Okay, so they're all playing for the same ends there. But they use the masses. They throw out a bit of ideology that people can latch on to, which is false, which is fake. The exact same way that those who recruit Islamic jihadists throw in a bit of extremist ideology in order to get them to come and join the brigade. Or the same with the neo-fascists. They do exactly the same. So that's how they get their foot soldiers. Okay, but in the end, they're all playing for the same ends.
They are,
which is to destroy local communities and centralize everything.
Can a third, when we say party, I mean, at this point in time, I don't want to get too far off into a discussion of a third party, but isn't that how a third party will emerge? That the Republicans and the Democrats have become absolutely worthless and destructive to our sovereignty as individuals. They really have. Isn't that how a third party will emerge, or do you think that's a dangerous thing to push for?
No, I used to be a big advocate of a third party, but then I saw what happened here in Britain at the last general election. The third party, which was the Liberal Democrats, who had been gaining seats in Parliament gradually over a 40 or 30 year period, they basically made a backroom deal, okay, with the Conservatives, who were second place. The third place and the second place made a backroom deal to form a coalition to take power. So they were unelected, both of them. In fact, they were the two most unpopular parties. Okay, I'm no fan of the Labor Party, which is the equivalent of the Democrats in America. But so the third party can subvert democracy just as quickly as it can gain some sort of parity. But the problem here is, you can sum this up, Pete. Okay, you watch the movie Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. I don't know if you remember that film.
Mad Max, yeah. Barely, right.
There's a second one, and there was this community called Thunderdome, and it was a desolate, futuristic dystopian Australia, and then they had this very corrupt capital sort of city that was so corrupt, morally corrupt, had its leadership in these positions, and they absolutely oppressive, and they had the gladiatorial games to feed the people's thirst for some entertainment and whatnot. And then, at some point, someone in the film, they wanted Mad Max to be their hero, their liberator, and he said, "I don't want to be a hero." And that, if the people got to decide that they got to throw the system down together and get rid of the old power structure. The political parties are cults. They're cults. They have symbols, they have colors, they have leaders. They are cults. Okay? That's all it is a political cult. If after America is done with its political parties, which have hijacked the democratic system over the years, and start seeing things in terms of independent individuals who are based on certain issues and not party alignments, then you're going to see some real progress in America. And I didn't see anything about political parties in the U.S. Constitution or the Declaration of Independence. It's not one word spoken about them. And they have done more to corrupt. Political parties have done more to corrupt what was a purely drafted, beautiful document and a framework for a government of a new independent republic than anything else in the history of the United States. And I challenge anyone to refute that.
You know, and I would say, I'm just thinking about it, probably the most revolutionary change in the opposite direction of where they're trying to take us with the Republicans and the Democrats is to immediately go for a no vote.
Yeah, none of the above.
None of the above, right?
Right. And also to strike down the monopoly that those parties have in keeping independents off ballots, okay, is shocking. They've literally written the rules for independence. And they do not have the right to do that, okay? And also, they've written rules so that they can game the system and raise all their money through their cults and so forth. So it's wholesale corruption on both sides. And now you look at their names, the Democrat Party. There's nothing democratic about the Democratic Party, okay? They're nothing democratic, the Republican Party are not moving towards a republic. So even the names are deceptive. And people don't think about that, but that's quite a powerful thing. They've got subliminal messaging in their names. You know, the skull plugging job that these parties do on people is incredible. And you see them at the conventions. It's like a Jim and Tammy Baker, sort of revival. It's shocking. And everyone goes because they feel like they're part of a bigger hive, and that's exactly how cults work. I'm sorry to make that comparison. That might offend people, but it kind of is. It is.
And once again, through the media, weaponized language, okay, to NLP our way into making decisions that favor the establishment. And this media mind control thing that's going on. Let me ask you this. Can the money shift? I mean, obviously, people are gravitating away from the mainstream media. It is a fact. I mean, they are losing people in absolute droves. And now we have all of our cattle, please excuse me for using that expression, just out in the open prairie, grazing in the new media, in the alternative media, just consuming as much as they can outside of the mainstream. Does that take away the political power? Or do you think that we have just a couple minutes here. If you could just wrap up here in the next minute. But do you think that we have the potential to take away their political? They can do all the fundraising they want. Where are they going to buy up all of their mainstream media ads? And how effective is that going to be if everyone's grazing out in the alternative or the independent media?
Yeah, as the alternative and independent media expands, which it does by the day, at the same time the ivory tower gets built higher and higher. So that the distance between the ivory tower and the land increases, the disconnection increases, and so they become more irrelevant. At the same time they become more powerful, they become more irrelevant.
That's right. And I'm going to say, when I say alternative media / independent media, I say alternative media, a lot of people think, oh, Alex Jones, he's the hot dog at the tip of the spear. Ladies and gentlemen, I also want you to recognize one thing. Rand Paul, okay, is not the solution. I'm going to tell you that right now. Rand Paul supports the NDAA. Rand Paul is supported by Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel is one of the most dangerous men on the planet of the earth. Alex Jones supports Rand Paul. Alex Jones is alternative media. He needs to be crushed and set aside. He's worthless piece of freaking crap if he's pushing Rand Paul. Independent media, okay? Us out here grazing for the truth, doing our absolute best to take our country back. I think we've had lots of great ideas, lots of solutions. I'm going to get off the air, and I'm going to go speak to Dabu 7 about launching his campaign here. I think it's a good one. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Great show.